Retro.
Hi, this is Fred Tatasciore, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. The Force is strong with both of them.
Hello, and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
Happy Monday. We are starting off this week by kicking off our coverage of the Ninth Jedi. So before we get into this new series, Jay, you want to remind everyone where we can find on social media?
Sure thing, Dennis. We are on Facebook and Instagram, as always, at Podcast Stardust.
Okay. The digital line, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield's down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we are going to be covering the Ninth Jedi, with 10 of them being called Season 1. We don't know if it's going to get another one or not, but we'll find out on a weekly basis. So we're going to cover, our current plan is to cover one episode per week. And Jay, you and I, we have not talked about this off mics almost at all, other than to confirm that neither one of us has watched more than the first episode.
Right.
So our plan is to try and react to these things with fresh eyes every time, as opposed to watching a bunch of episodes and then covering them individually with the knowledge in our, in our back of our minds is what's happened in later episodes. So if you watched ahead, more power to you. That's just the way that we're doing it here for the next 8 weeks or so. So with that said, let's get into it. This first episode is called A New Threat. It picks up after the episode from season 3 of Visions, which was the Ninth Jedi. I can't remember exactly what the full title of that was. You and I weren't big fans of that episode in season 3 of Visions. And we've talked about elsewhere on other shows about how we were a little bit apprehensive about this series. But now that you've had an opportunity to watch the first episode, what did you think?
Well, I'm still processing, but one of the things that I noticed about not only, from watching The Ninth Jedi in Visions, but also in this very first pilot episode is that it is obviously very Japanese storytelling, but it works within the Star Wars universe, if you will, of course, because we know that the Japanese culture has always been kind of adjacent to a lot of the Star Wars things that we get in the storytelling as well. But what I really liked that this pilot set up was the fact that the series just seems really interested in asking what happens when the visual language and the definitions of what we know in Star Wars stop being readable. And everything is very uncertain at this point. So what we thought lightsabers were all about, they're not. What we thought maybe a Sith was supposed to be like in a hierarchy of power, not so much,
Yeah.
So it was very intriguing in that way to me. So I'm eager to talk about and dissect this first episode to get into it even more. But what about you?
Well, as I tease, I had very low expectations for this. I'm not going to lie. You and I have talked about how we're much bigger fans of the Ronin character, from the duel from season 1, and can't remember what they called the episodes from season 3, but how we would love for them to pursue a series with that. But they didn't do so.
Yes.
That's fine. Maybe they didn't. Maybe the creators didn't want to. That's their prerogative. So I came into this with low expectations. I liked the Ninth Jedi episode from season 1 of Visions. I thought that was really cool about how, this notion about the Jedi and the Sith have fallen. And now the galaxy's kind of in this stage of turmoil. There's very few Jedi out there. And one just happens to be the sabersmith. His name is Zhima. The sabers he builds, they demonstrate the heart, the soul, the character of the person who's wielding them. And so that's what the color you get. But then he gets kidnapped by Sith, or not Sith, but warlords, and carried away. And now you got his daughter, Kara, La Kara, looking for him. Great. There was things that with that very long-winded answer to my opinion on this overall. There was things from that season 3 episode, most Tito, that droid, that just drove me up the wall, that didn't seem to really capture the spirit of Star Wars or take the spirit of Star Wars in a direction that I could necessarily appreciate it. And, we talked about the way that Kara was emoting all the time. And yes, that is a
that's
Japanese
still
anime type of thing, but I just I wasn't resonating with any of that. Again, so I came with low expectations, and this impressed me. I gotta say, is it my favorite thing Star Wars ever? No, but this was so much better than that season 3 episode. From the opening scene where Juro's ship is being pursued by the I'm going to be stumbling some because all these names are new and
Right.
they're
Oh, yeah, for
they're
sure.
kind of hard to keep at the tip of your tongue. But you got Gennoh, that's Ikagi, who was that Sith Lord you're talking about, referring to. Him and his gigantic ship was in pursuit. That's a variation on the opening to A New Hope. But it's a different perspective, it's a different angle on it, but that's essentially the type of thing that we've got going on. And I was hooked by that, even though a lot of the Star Wars imagery is altered for this to things that we don't necessarily like. There's no aliens in this that are classic Star Wars aliens. There's plenty of aliens, but it's the lightsaber, it's the concepts of the Force, Jedi and Sith. That's our connection to our original trilogy and stuff like that. But this told a story that I am very interested in following going forward on this, which quite frankly, I found it a relief, because this is the big fall release for Star Wars this year. And, frankly, when they announced it, I was a bit disappointed that this is what we were going to be getting for this part of the year. But so anyway, I'll just say, I liked it quite a bit. Not my favorite Star Wars thing ever, but this is something that I am very interested to pursue episode to episode.
Yeah, I'm definitely more interested than I thought I was going to be as well. I wouldn't say it's completely sold me just yet, but like I was saying, it is intriguing and I'm giving it a chance. So, but I have to ask you, isn't there a Japanese with the English subtitles available somewhere as well? Because I couldn't figure out how to switch it over. Or do I just have to go to the settings and like manually do all the things?
I think when I started, it asked me if I wanted to watch it with the Japanese language and English subtitles. And
It
I
did
did
not
not.
give me that
Yeah,
option.
I just picked English for my version, but
Yeah, because
I
I thought it
think
would do that, like the Spider Noir. Do you want to watch it in the Technicolor? Do you want to watch it in black and white? And it
right.
did not do that.
Yeah, I think it would be easy enough to probably switch it over to the Japanese language with English subtitles if that's the way you want to go. But so yeah,
Yeah,
I know
but
that's
irregardless, go ahead.
yeah. As I
Finish
say,
yours.
a lot of anime fans like to get the Japanese language with English subtitles. I just
That's
don't
me.
have big. Yeah, as I say, I don't have that big of enough of a anime background for it to matter to me. Yeah, as another anime aside, we just watched the movie version, the new movie that came out on Netflix for Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh,
A
okay.
couple weekends ago, that was good. That's anime. We'd
Yeah.
watched the series over COVID with our boys, but so hey,
Well, that's a
my
big
anime,
one. Yeah.
yeah, my horizons are expanding when it comes to
There you
anime. But
go. Well,
here we
Dave
go.
Filoni was, I mean, that was his jam, was
hmm
Avatar. So that's really
Yeah, he
cool.
worked.
But no, it's funny. Go ahead. I keep interrupting you tonight. I'm
No, no,
sorry.
no. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the whole thing with the subtitles that I had on
Mhm.
was funny because I did leave the English subtitles on, but at one point it was like, oh, alien speaking alien language, and then the music were for example, vivacious music playing or
Yeah.
jubilant music playing, or so that was funny. But what were you gonna say about Dave? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying anything about Dave. But
Oh.
the with the language, I listened to it in English and I had the English subtitles on. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
these things, it's just with dogs and appliances running in the house, whatever, it just gets loud. And
Right.
so at this stage in my life, I need subtitles. So
Well, it's funny because I think most mid-20 somethings, that's their MO anymore. I know a lot of people in that age range, my oldest son definitely being one of them. He will not watch anything without subtitles. So anytime I go over there, he says, "Mom, I'm sorry, but I have to have subtitles on." I'm like, "I don't care. It's fine."
Yeah. Well, as a mid-20 something, no, I kid. But so moving on, they have this opening narration, which I'm wondering why they just didn't do this as an opening crawl, because it was essentially the same thing. You have this narrator talking about setting up the show, and he says, "The era of the Jedi and Sith has ended. They have all but disappeared, and with them, the ancient art of crafting their sacred weapon, the lightsaber. A terrible age of conflict now mires the galaxy in chaos as warlords rise. Among them, the fierce masked General Nawaam has emerged, spreading terror as planets fall under his control at an alarming rate. Amid this, Margrave Juro works to bring back the Jedi Order in the hope that they can restore peace and justice to the galaxy." I was like, that's pretty cool. I don't know why. Okay, I'm promising to stop harping on that episode from season 3 of Visions, but it's like, why did we need that in there? This is such a better story told from this angle and this perspective. But I kind of wish they had done that as an opening crawl, just to post, instead of having just a narrator give it to us. But that may be more of a Japanese thing. I don't know.
Well, I was wondering about that as well, but I thought, well, maybe it would have been too hard to do one in Japanese and then one in English,
No, that's
perhaps,
a thought. Yeah,
but
that's
I'm
a
not
thought.
sure. But what it did remind me of is an episode of Clone Wars, where
Yeah.
you hear Tom Kane doing the entire
The era of the Jedi and the Sith has ended.
Exactly. Oh, nice. Look at you busting out the impersonations. I love it.
Yeah. The thing that did occur to me afterwards is that some of the most like Star Wars like imagery that we saw outside of lightsabers and force powers and stuff like that came in this montage. And that was like, they showed us like an image of Coruscant with that Senate office building that looked like it had collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then there was like in space, the ruins of a Trade Federation battleship floating around and stuff. But beyond that, they just really got away from the classic Star Wars imagery, which again is not a big deal to me as long as you get the end of the spirit of Star Wars and you have enough other touchstones, which I think this did.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I wrote that down that there was lots of visual evidence of destruction from all of those different types of, separatist era and republic and all of those things. And I thought, this kind of goes along with what I was saying with if you look at it from that point of view, that what we know, we have to unlearn what we've learned kind of thing. The old stories are dead. What's next? And obviously they aren't, but I mean, as far as the framing device for this particular series.
Yeah.
turns
So
it on
the
its head.
opening scene that comes after this is again that pursuit scene that we were talking about just a second ago, where Margrave Juro's ship with Kara and we have Gramps, the droid, who I really like, Homan, who's the alien
Yes.
Jedi, and they're all in there with Juro, and they're being pursued by Gennoh's battleship. And he has a tracker on the ship, so everywhere they go, this is like straight out of The Last Jedi, right? It's what happened to the Radis. It had a tracker on it, so the First Order could follow them wherever they went, and that's what kept happening. And so Gramps comes up with a plan where he takes them near a black hole, and they're nimble enough to escape, which is not how physics works, but we're going to look past that for the moment. But the bigger,
Right.
yeah, Gennoh's ship is going to get sucked in, but he ends up using the Force to save them on that. As an aside, I looked this up because it's like that we're going with the Asian naming conventions, clearly with La Cara and La Zhima, the same kind of way they did with Din Djarin and Din Grogu and whatever here. And so it's like, so is Margrave Juro in Western naming conventions? Would he be Juro Margrave? And the answer to this, I don't think so, because Margrave is actually a medieval military title from the Holy Roman Empire of all things. It's a commander rank of all that. So I think he's supposed to be some sort of a Jedi commander, and his name is just Juro. Margrave is not actually part of his name.
Well, there's to your point, Lakara, she continues to call him Margrave Juro, especially when they go to see and again I'm is it Dunby? Yes.
Done by,
On
yeah.
Makoma Ko, when
Mhm.
they go to see him and she keeps calling him Margrave, Margrave, and he says, "No, it's just Juro. You can
Yeah.
call me Juro." So
Mhm.
I'm wondering if there's something to that.
Yeah, it'd be like, Qui-Gon looking to Obi-Wan and say, "You don't have to call me Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn. You just call me Qui-Gon
Right.
or Master or whatever." But, um, so yeah, I think that's very much a rank signifier as opposed to a name signifier there. But how cool was that scene where Gennoh was using the Force to pull his ship out of the black hole's gravity well? I
Yeah.
thought that was a pretty clever use of the Force that made sense.
Oh, for sure. And it also frames how powerful he is going
Mhm.
forward too.
Yeah. And, frankly, just getting the touchstones of the droid calculating the coordinates for that jump because their nav computer had gone down.
Mhm.
I like that. I just like the dialogue. I like the camaraderie between the members of the cast there. It would kind of felt like not exactly the same thing, but akin to the type of bickering and banter that we got with Luke, Han, Leia, and the droids
Mhm.
from the original trilogy.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I really like Gramps, but of course,
Mhm.
I'm always drawn to the droids, so that's no surprise.
Mhm. So the next big part of this episode is that they get to Makoma Ko, and it is under the rule of Dunby, which you suggested earlier, and who is a former Jedi, and he's not interested in throwing in with Juro in his effort to rebuild the Jedi Order. But the unknowns to Juro and Kara, Gennoh has rescued his ship. He still's got the tracker on their ship, so he's able to track them here to this planet Makoma Ko. And I got Lando vibes from Dunby in a way that, he's basically saying, I put my Jedi life behind me. My responsibility is to these people. And so, no, I can't join your rebellion and I can't participate in your new Jedi Order. But Juro gives him a lightsaber that Zhima had. I'm sorry. Do you not think of that drink from the 90s? That
Yes, thank you.
every time they see it, it's just so distracting. But there we are.
Sorry. Yes, I do.
Okay, but and so he's appealing to Dunby, and he even when Dunby basically says no, I'm not going to do it. He still leaves a lightsaber there. But what did you think about Dunby and this scene on Makoma Ko?
I like your comparison of Dunby to Lando because I can see that as Lando was trying to be the administrator of Cloud City and he was just trying to make decisions for his people and, and all the things. But obviously Dunby has something that Lando didn't, which is the Force. And
Mhm.
there's that history of being a Jedi there and what that means and what those values mean too. So yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit more and I thought to myself, he's almost kind of like what maybe Obi-Wan would have been if that was something that his life would have maybe taken that sort of turn. You know what I mean? Like I could
Mhm.
see Obi-Wan saying even some of those same things that Dunby said in terms of resisting what he was in the past, but yet coming around to okay, this is what's best for my people to pick up this mantle. And in this case, it's the lightsaber. So,
Yeah,
but I like your comparison.
I like your comparison also to Obi-Wan. Like if Obi-Wan had left the Jedi Order
Right.
to be with Duchess Satine, and then
Mhm.
having had a responsibility to the people of Mandalore, I could see Dunby being very much like him. Man, talking about what ifs. We just did our news episode talking about like Anne Hathaway is an evil stepsister or half sister to Luke and Leia. This is another one. If Obi-Wan had left the Order to be with
Yeah.
Duchess Satine and rule Mandalore, and then gets after the destruction, does he get called back to being a Jedi to
Mhm.
yeah, wow. There's another story. Okay, we need to start writing Infinity's comics, Jay. So
Yes, we
anyway,
do. There you go.
yeah, I liked Dunby here, and I like he's resistant to do anything that's going to put his people in danger. But then the Sith, we barely talked about this. He's a Sith Lord who they say like the last Sith Lord, I think, almost in this situation. But he's not even. He reports to this warlord named Nawaam, which was quite an interesting name. It's so hard to say some of these. They're just not rolling off the tongue. But So Gennoh shows up and he's threatening the planet and the city. And so Dunbai has to basically take up this lightsaber and go out and lead his men against the droid army that Gennoh has unleashed against them. Talk about like your Phantom Menace vibes with this one, right? I mean, Gennoh unleashes battle droids on there that reminding more of IG-11 or IG-88 than they actually did the classic battle droids. But and then you've got the underdog forces of Makoma Ko to fight them. But what did you think about that entire battle and what was happening there?
Well, going back to what you said about Gennoh being what they called the last Sith is very intriguing because, of course, we have what we know as the rule of two. So what happened and who is left, the master or the apprentice? But I thought to myself also, it's kind of weird that he's serving a warlord as opposed to, going out and doing things for himself. But perhaps we'll find out why. And it almost makes me wonder, is Nawaam, which I keep thinking of Narwhal, really in charge, or is Gennoh just making him think that he is, kind of thing? And maybe Gennoh will be the mastermind behind everything later on, perhaps. But I did like the way that it was set up in terms of, like you said, there's almost like a Palpatine Maul vibe to that too, that Gennoh is being used kind of as a tool. But yeah, I really liked the battle scenes because it was, like you said, it was kind of reminiscent of some of the battle droids, but they felt a little bit more like the assassin droids. And so again, the whole visualization was kind of turned on its head, but it worked.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we're supposed to make these touchstones to what we know about Star Wars, but kind of like with the duel and the Ronin character, the Sith aren't the same thing as the Sith that they were in the Star Wars movies that we're
Right.
familiar with here. So I think that's kind of where we are with Nawaam and Gennoh. Beyond that, I like Dunbai going out there, taking up the saber, defending his men. That was pretty cool. I mean, I got to admit, the action was kind of lackluster in the fighting between the droids and the soldiers of Makoma Ko there. I mean, it was just kind of them like marching at each other and shooting. And even Dunbai taking up the saber and using the Force wasn't exactly the most impressive looking Jedi action that we've ever seen either. But, further cementing the Phantom Menace vibes was this whole infiltration of Gennoh's ship to shut down the droid control unit there. And it was Kara who was leaving that with Gramps to take on that. And then she comes face to face with Gennoh in that battle. And the whole thing turns out like, she's not even trying to beat him. It's just to distract him long enough so that Gramps can power down the battle droids. So that was kind of a nice touch.
It is. And it's classic Star Wars. The underdog is underestimated. And so even though Gennoh thought that he had the upper hand on Kara, that she was saying, well, I just needed you to be distracted so that my friend over there could shut down your droids. So that was cool.
Yeah. And so, Gennoh leaves as the starship crashes into the city, and no one seems to be particularly bothered by that. But
Independence Day. They were cheering it.
But there's a whole big celebratory reception afterwards when no one, I would think that ship crashing would have been the demise of a whole lot of people, but whatever.
You would think.
So the final part of this story takes place on whatever planet Nawaam has set up as his headquarters. And he's got La Zhima in a cell. And there's been a bit of angst thrown Kara's way in the previous scene where Gennoh is like, oh, your father is one of Nawaam's most eager collaborators. And that does not appear to be the truth based on where we find Zhima here in the cell. But then there are a number of hench people. I don't know exactly what they're all there. Mercenaries, hench people, hangers on, people who are trying to get Nawaam's attention. And they're talking about how Nawaam has said if anyone can defeat him in combat, they can take over his forces. And as they're concluding that part of the discussion, Nawaam shows up and says, yes, it's true. And okay, excuse the exposition. I'm just trying to set up the scene. But we've got Ethan, who is a friend of Kara and Juro's there, who's basically undercover. You get the feeling he's kind of like a Jedi Padawan, Jedi Knight, not a Jedi Master. And he's accompanied by Nines, this droid whose name is 9999. And so they're just, he's kind of like almost trying to sow discord about this. Like, who is this leader? You believe it? If someone could beat him, then they can take over his army. And that's when Nawaam shows up. And there just happens to be another unnamed Jedi in the area who does not have a lightsaber, because they've all become super rare now that Zhima, the lightsaber crafter, is been captured. And he ends up having a very short duel with Nawaam, who pulls his lightsaber and runs him through, and he's got a blue blade. Now, we saw that in the trailer for this season, and they didn't give us a whole lot to go off there, but this is not a light side of the Force thing, as best I can tell. What did you make of all this? Because Ethan's reaction is like, how can his blade be blue in this regard? But do you have any thoughts? What's your reaction to all this?
Right. So, we were led to believe from the trailer and from the outset that one of the things about the series was that the kyber crystals were going to reflect the soul of the user. So, yeah, so right away you're thinking to yourself, but wait a second, because he's supposed to be a bad guy, so why is his blade blue? So again, it's just another example of how everything is very uncertain at this point in the show, that we are upending. Again, you have to unlearn what you've learned and see how they are aligning what's going on here. And I think obviously that's the point too, is to keep us guessing and to, question exactly what is going on here. So I think the fact that the lightsaber is this reoccurring theme as a focal point is also very intriguing, because again, when the whole thing, when they went to Makoma Ko and Juro gives Dunbai the saber back, it's more of a symbol than anything else. It's not just an artifact. It's truly a symbol, because as you pointed out, there's not many of them around anymore. So yeah, so my head's just kind of swimming with, oh gosh, what are the implications of this? Because everyone else seemed very surprised as well from that.
Yeah.
Not just that he didn't own a red lightsaber, but the fact that the blade became blue in his presence.
Right. So keep in mind, I've only seen this once. I have not had an opportunity to watch this episode a second time. But just thinking of the lightsabers here, Kara's got a greenish blade, and we've seen basically those type of colors, blues and greens, for all of our core Jedi characters here. When we see Gennoh, he's got a red lightsaber here. And, that was kind of a shock to Kara. It's like, where'd you get a lightsaber? And it comes to find out that, Lazima's been captured by Nawaam. And so that's the source of lightsabers. And Gennoh is clearly a Sith type, right? I mean, he's waging war against civilians here. And so they did a good job setting up the shock value with this reveal that Nawaam's got a blue lightsaber there. We just don't have enough yet. I realize that. We need more episodes and more of the story to figure out why this could be, someone following the light side, essentially, could have this blue lightsaber and still condone the atrocities that are being done in his name. But I don't know, it's just kind of a fun moment of pause, right? That if you put yourself in that situation, it's like, wait a minute, we're the Jedi, we're the good guys. How can this guy have a blue slide? How can the light side be favoring him?
Exactly. And so that's why I'm saying it's really going to turn a lot of things like on its head as far as what we are traditionally used to knowing and believing and so on.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad we talked about this episode. I don't know that I got a whole lot more to say, but it's as I said at the beginning of the episode, it's intriguing. I'm curious about this take. I'm not certain that I'm looking at this series to tell me more about the core Star Wars galaxy that we enjoy so much.
Sure.
But just the take on it, giving us enough touchstones that are subverting our expectations and making us question what's going on here, kind of, as you said, relearning what we have learned already about Star Wars to make all this fit. I kind of like the mental jog that's going on with all this.
No, well said, mental jog. I like that.
Yeah.
So who are you most interested in learning more about at this point in the series?
Well, look, we have to face it. Kara is going to be a central figure based on what they showed us in the trailer here. And she's fine. I like her a lot better in here than we did in the Visions 3. Nawaam is intriguing me because they're clearly concealing his identity. We got to face it. They're not going to reveal him to be anybody that we know. That's not going to be the point. But I have a feeling at some point his identity is going to be a big deal. And so how are they going to do that? And what is it going to tell us? So I'm very eager about them. But I really like Margrave Juro. I think he's just really cool. So I think that's my favorite character. But the one I'm most intrigued by is Nawaam and what's the story around that character. How about you?
No, that's totally fair. Yeah, I like Margrave Juro too. He definitely has a Qui-Gon vibe. And you had brought up Qui-Gon Jinn, as far as his name goes. And I thought, oh gosh, that's like the perfect comparison, quite honestly. And Zhima is, for me, he's just, I don't know, because everyone knows him as something different. You know what I mean? So Kara knows him as her father, obviously. And then Juro knows him as more of a Jedi ally. Nawaam sees him as this really powerful Jedi and collaborator with like Gennoh. And obviously that's a claim that we don't know that for sure. And Zhima just basically says he's a sabersmith, of himself. And he's so kind of cool and calm and collected about it. So I don't know. I really like his character, and I want to know even more, because obviously we got some of that in the Vision series, but I feel like he's going to play a major role. And so I'm eager to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, because it was fascinating that last bit of dialogue between Zhima and Nawaam was that, Zhima says, you call yourself a sabersmith even though that you're one of the most powerful Jedi ever. Something along those lines, paraphrasing there. So I think it speaks to Zima's humbleness there in that regard. And I think that sets him apart from Gennoh and maybe Nawaam. We'll just have to find out more about Nawaam as this goes forward. All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and wrap up our discussion for the week on the Ninth Jedi here. And just thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust. We hope you're enjoying the Ninth Jedi and our discussion of this series. And if you want to make sure that you get more of that discussion as we go forward, subscribe to the podcast on your podcatcher choice. We're available on pretty much every podcatcher that is out there. And we'd love it if you could follow, like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever it is that your podcatcher endorses. Those things help us out, get us in front of more Star Wars fans that might be interested in our discussion. And that means a lot to us. If you want to find more episodes of Podcast Stardust and our discussions of the various movies, the various series, books, comics, and everything that we've been covering for 7 years at this point, head over to retrozapp.com and you get all previous 1,068 episodes there. So with that, Jay, you want to remind everybody what our social media presence is one more time and where else we can be found online?
Absolutely. So we are very easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust, and we sure would love it if you would post us to your stories and share us out with your friends as well. And you can always check out all of our Pinterest pages. And once again, we have outlets on both YouTube and YouTube Music. So if you need even more places to listen to us, find us, download, share with your friends, leave some comments and different types of reactions, then you can do that there. And you can also send us an email at podcaststardust@gmail.com. And if you would like to support the show even more, you can pick up a piece of merch with the Podcast Stardust logo on it. We have 7 different show logo designs available over at our TeePublic store, and the link for that will be in our show notes.
Okay. Upcoming on the show on Wednesday, we're going to be talking some Star Wars comics by discussing the first 2 issues of Shadow of Maul, which is the prequel to Maul Shadow Lord, which was out earlier this year. And then on Friday, we'll be wrapping up the week with a look at recent Star Wars news. So thanks for listening to episode 1069 of Podcast Stars, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.